Goal setting. When we start refereeing, all of us have goals. We have goals at the start of our career we want to achieve. We have goals at the start of every season. We have goals at the start of every game. And I think what I want to talk about is there's a difference between outcome goals and process goals. So, for example, when I was refereeing, I wanted to referee the World Cup final. I never achieved that, and that's a shame. You move on. But I hear a lot, especially when I talk to referees at all levels, and even the professional referees I work with now, when I talk to about what are you trying to achieve? I say, well, I want to referee the Pro 14 final. I want to referee the European Cup final. And I'm like, okay, that's great. Now talk to me about, well, how are you going to do that? Well, I'll referee really well and I'll get promoted and I'll be the best referee. No, you're missing the point. Tell me, what are you going to do in games and how are you going to achieve that? And that's the difference between an outcome and a process goal. So when we're talking about goal setting, try and focus on process goals. And what I mean by that is, what do you need to do to become a better referee? What do you need to do to become the best referee in your level, in your area, in your competition, in your country? And it's not about, I need to referee this game, or I need to referee that game. It's, I need to work on this skill, or I need to work on this area of the game. So, for example, one of my big goals, or when I was talking about it, was like, I need to be better at dealing with people on the pitch. My player management needed to be better. So that was a big goal for me personally. And how I'd approach that is to say, right, this is my goal. I want to be better at dealing with players. How I go about doing that, that's the really important thing. And that's where you can break that goal down into a couple of things that will make you better. So when I talked about player management, one of my big goals was, right, I need to know what I'm going to say before I say it. That was a goal. How do I do that? I rehearse what I'm going to say. I go through scenarios, in my pre-match, in my prep during the week, around different areas of the game. That's how I'm going to achieve that. It was also about staying, emotionally level when I'm communicating with player management. So I wasn't too up here or too down here. And that was about finding time and space on the pitch. So when I would approach a player, I want to talk to him, it would be, right, rehearse quickly what I'm going to say in my mind, find time and space on the pitch, and then deliver that message. And that was a goal, and that was something that I worked towards. So I think it's really important. So when you set goals, and we've talked about this when you review games, so if one of your goals is better decision making. I want to make better decision making in the last 15 minutes of a game. Okay, great, that's a goal. So think about how you're going to do that. And it could be as simple as, right, well, I'm actually going to become fitter, because I'm getting fatigued in the last 15 minutes. So therefore, I'm going to work on my fitness. I'm going to find someone who knows more about fitness than I do. I'm going to ask their advice, and I'm going to go and get this fitness program. I'm going to work hard in the gym, so I'm fitter. Okay, that's fantastic. It could also be about, we're linking this stuff to, resetting yourself from decisions. So in the last 15 minutes, it could be my head is so cluttered up by what's happened in the previous 75 minutes that I'm finding it difficult to reset myself. Okay, well, we can work on that as a goal. So let's come up with some processes around how to reset yourself. And then, also link your goals to your review. So if one of your goals is around, performing under pressure in the last 15 minutes, well, make sure you review that when you're reviewing the game with somebody. And that'll be right, so how do I keep improving those goals? And again, I think you can link, your goal setting to your preview and to your review. So everything in this series that I'm talking about, everything is linked together. It's all about trying to make you become a better match official, a better referee. So your goal setting. So what are your goals? Okay, well, that's going to inform your match plan. That's going to inform the work that you do with your team of three. That's going to inform how you communicate decisions on the pitch and how you manage people on the pitch. And that's also going to inform how you do your review. So you're always coming back to these goals. And again, it's just having these 2 or 3 big rocks or big areas to work on in games when you're doing goal setting, rather than going from, and I think the worst type of goals you can have are where you're going to go from game to game and you go, right, what's my goal this week? I'm going to get the scrum really good, really right. Okay, and I'm going to nail the scrum. Okay, great. Well, if you nail the scrum and then next week you have an issue with foul play, well, how are you going to do that? And that's, I think, again, when you're reviewing games, instead of just like pressing play, going through and go, right, what were the issues in this one game? Well, this week I had issues around, foul play. Well, actually, did you have issues around foul play? Or did you have an issue around one of those key criteria, those key skills, those world-class criteria and skills that we talked about in another video? Was it actually your issue around performing under pressure rather than foul play? Because you could deal with foul play and you could say, right, next week when I get a dangerous tackle or a high tackle, this is how I'm going to deal with that. And actually, you might never have that situation ever again. So what's the point in prepping that same situation again in future? The whole point is actually, no, I need to prep how I perform under that, how I perform under pressure in that situation, or how I communicate my decision in that situation. And you take those goals, those key criteria, those key skills, and then you move that forward in your goals, and then that becomes relevant for any decision at any time, any game, any situation. Again, going 1 week, it might be around the breakdown. In rugby, you might have issues around the breakdown. So you spend your whole time, trying to perfect and trying to get better at that skill. Well, actually, you're missing the point. It could be about tactical game sense. It could be about linking decisions in the game. So, for example, I reviewed a game last week, and the referee had a really good game, but he made a decision in the first minute, and he goes, "That's the right decision." Okay, great. But then 60 minutes, 70 minutes, 78 minutes, that same situation came and he made a different decision. Now, that's not to say he's terrible at refereeing the breakdown. Far from it. It's to say that his tactical game sense in that game wasn't as good as it needed to be. So therefore, when you're setting goals, you don't set goals around, right, I want to be brilliant at this one specific thing in a game. It's linking back, what are the world-class skills, what are the world-class criteria that are going to make you one of the best referees you possibly can be. Find what they are, define what they are, and then you link incidents in games to those criteria so that when you're setting your goals, when you're reviewing games, when you're previewing games, when you're talking with your coaches, those themes are all linked. And you can build on them gradually from game to game, from week to week, month to month. And over time, you become much better at dealing with those criteria, becoming better at those key skills, and that will make you a better referee. So when we're talking about these key criteria, what I think is really important is as a group of referees, you need to get together and define what they are. And it's not easy. So, and I think, I'll go back to the ones I've talked about. So what we did and how we started this is we got together with a group of referees and referee coaches, and we said, right, well, we've got some referees here. What do these referees need to do to become world-class Tier 1 test referees? What do they need to be good at? And we wrote it all down, and you get some Post-its, you have a great exercise together as a group, you stick them all on the wall, and then you go, okay, well, let's try and pick some themes out of this. And then you get all your notes, you might have 100 different Post-its, and you try and put them into themes. So it could be, getting the big decision right at the end of the game. What theme is that? That's probably performing under pressure. Making sure that you're consistent in games. What theme is that? Well, that's probably tactical game sense. Dealing with difficult players. Will that be game management? And you can split all these things up. And it might be different for different sports. And it might be different for the same sport over different periods of the year or different years even. But once you've got these criteria, then you can then break it down. And so you go, what does this actually mean? Because if you said, right, to someone, perform under pressure, what does that actually mean? And it's quite hard to articulate. But if you can actually then get together and go, right, let's really drill down. So performing under pressure, what does that mean? Dealing with big incidents in games, getting the big decisions right in games, refereeing really well in the championship minutes of games. And I mean that the last 10, 15 minutes when the score's tight. And then you define them. Once you define them and you write them down, you can then start to measure them. And that's really, really important. Once you measure them, you can then see where the gaps are. Once you know where the gaps are, you can then work to coach and you can work to upskill people. So, we've got referees at the moment who I work with who, one of their big things is tactical game sense. Well, how we define that as an area they need to work on, that should be one of their goals. So what do we need to do? We need to find out where the gap is. So what's their gap? And it's, the example I mentioned before, it was making consistent decisions throughout the game. And it's not, getting this decision around the breakdown or this decision around the scrum or line out right. It's being consistent throughout the game. How do you measure that? You can measure consistency. So you take what he did in the first 10 minutes, does he replicate that through the next 70 minutes? And you could give them a score. You can find some way to grade someone, give them a mark out of 10 with evidence. Once you've got that mark and once you've measured it, you can then look at where the gaps are, and now we can start coaching. And this is where the coach comes in, your peer groups, your reviewing comes in, and you can go, right, well, actually, what I'm finding in the tactical game sense is actually I'm really good for the first 50 minutes, but then for the next, from minute 50 to minute 70, then I have that problem. Why is that? Is it because of your half-time routine? Is it because of how your fuel, your body energy, are you hydrated? Have you eaten the right things before games? And if you know about it and you know when it happens in a game, you can then explore why it happens. Once you know the why, you can then look to fix it. But if we go through a game and we just say throughout a season to a referee, your tactical game sense isn't very good, well, how's that referee going to fix it? How are we helping them fix it? Because they might not know what you mean by it. So define what the key skills are. Actually drill into the detail of what do those key skills mean. Measure them. Find where the gaps are. Then we can start coaching the gaps.